This week on Dangerous Tides, we will be examining the fate of the ship that had rescued the crew of the Cowle, the SS Frank H. Goodyear. While the loss of this freighter was not as catastrophic or contributory to OSHA regulations as the prior wrecks we have covered so far, this story is no less intriguing and no less an example of the standards of the progressive era of shipping on the Great Lakes. Many of the ownership of these vessels weighed safety standards against shipping as much cargo as possible, with some owners even using their vessels for their personal excursions. This ship certainly falls into all of these categories, with some of its more unique features and stories surrounding the aftermath of her sinking. So climb aboard as we explore the Frank H. Goodyear on Dangerous Tides. The Frank H. Goodyear was launched on August 23, 1902, at the American Shipbuilding Company in Lorain, Ohio, and was commissioned by the Buffalo and Susquehanna Iron Company, a subsidiary joint venture between Brown & Company's Vice President William A. Rogers and a founder of S.H. and C.W. Goodyear Lumber Company, who also happened to be the ship's namesake. Frank Goodyear was the brother of Charles W. Goodyear, who founded the company and its subsidiaries that followed afterwards. After making their fortunes in lumbering manufacturing, they built other companies to support their businesses. One such subsidiary is the Buffalo and Susquehanna Railroad Company, which was meant to support lumber and coal to his sawmills in New York. Frank Goodyear was also an early developer of the Pullman sleeping car for the railway and had his own private car named the Cinema Honing. Goodyear was reportedly so proud of the car and the vessel he built, he had installed a duplicate of the Cinema Honing car as a private deckhouse on the spar deck in 1903. Despite the freighter being built as a workhorse for his railway and iron manufacturer, Frank Goodyear himself would use the ship as a private yacht whenever he could and kept it in pristine condition. The Frank H. Goodyear was built at a length of 436 feet with a width of 50 feet and a weight of 4,815 gross tonnage. She ran on coal-fired boilers with a triple expansion engine at 1,450 horsepower. As if the installation of the Cinema Honing replica was not unique on its own, the Pullman car-turned-deckhouse had all the luxuries of the turn of the century, including a fully stocked bar, copper tub, and grand piano. This made Frank H. Goodyear a one-of-its-kind ship, and its design a standard of opulence that likely would not be seen on the Great Lakes again. The Frank H. Goodyear had an unremarkable service for the first 7 years of its life, save for an asset transfer from the Buffalo and Susquehanna Steamship Company in 1904 under the management of John Mitchell, who would operate the freighter under Mitchell & Company for the remainder of its service. Frank Goodyear himself would pass away from Bright's disease 3 years before her final voyage, with his brother managing the F.H. and C.W. Goodyear until his passing in 1911. On July 12, 1909, the Frank H. Goodyear was involved with the rescue of the survivors of the John B. Cowle after monitoring a routine passing between her and the Isaac M. Scott went horrifically wrong that day due to the excessive speed order by both Captain Wallace G. Rogers and Captain Archie MacArthur of their respective ships. The Goodyear's captain, F. Russell Heminger, would be central to the rescue of the survivors of the John B. Cowle, as well as the crew of the Isaac M. Scott. Heminger would serve as captain until a year later. On the morning of May 23, 1910, the Frank H. Goodyear was traveling downbound with a load of iron ore in a heavy fog to be delivered to a port in Lake Erie. At 5:45 a.m., Goodyear was blasting its whistles according to regulations, and breakfast had been underway for the crew. Captain Heminger considered the fog to be a little bit more than just an annoyance, much like the captains of the Cowle and Scott, but had all the pilot house windows open along with the whistle blasts. Also, like the captains of the ships he was involved with, slowing down was not a part of his plan. A captain was more likely to lose his license from not moving enough cargo than losing their ship. There were also no separate lanes for upbound and downbound traffic on the lake, so vessels passed within shouting distance of each other. One of the deck watches made a warning yell and Captain Heminger would order the ship's whistle to blow 5 short blasts, a warning to the other ship encroaching the vehicle. Around 6 a.m., off Point Au Barques, Michigan, the 500-foot-long SS James B. Wood would ram the Goodyear amidship near the bow. According to the surviving crew members, the collision was so loud it, quote, sounded a lot louder than the shrieking of the Wood's whistle, from the tearing and the scraping of the metal. Many of the crew had already picked up and fastened life preservers, including second cook Frank H. Bassett, his wife Lillian Bassett, who was a porter, and his mother, Emma Bassett, who served as a steward. Frank's 3-year-old son, John, was there to keep them all company. All the crew attempted to launch the lifeboats of the SS Frank H. Goodyear, but the ship was sinking too rapidly. One of the crew aboard the Wood would share his account with the Columbus News.
I was standing on deck, having just come from my quarters, when I heard the alarm whistle. A moment more, and 2 boats came together. I ran forward to find that our boat had not been damaged to any great extent. I could see that the Goodyear was sinking. Standing amidships, with the entire crew huddled closely together, I could see the first one and then another one jump overboard.
Another crew member of the Wood would paint the scene of horror with their account. Suddenly, the Goodyear made a lurch to one side and went out of sight, leaving only a big hole in the water, and the suction carried the crew down with it. According to Frank's account, he had taken immediate steps to save his wife and son by fastening life preservers onto both of them. Around the time he was doing so, the boat jerked under him, and something struck him in the back of the head, knocking him unconscious. Eyewitnesses had stated both Lillian and his son had come to the surface after the suction of the water going into the SS Frank H. Goodyear had pulled them down. The air pressure from the inrushing water was so great, it blew some of the hatch covers off and shot them in the air before the Frank H. Goodyear sank. One of those hatch covers struck and killed both Lillian and John. Emma Bassett would also give her account of the sinking that day. According to her, she was scrubbing the cabin floors when she heard the whistles of both ships.
In fact, we were so close, it attracted my attention, and I went on deck. A moment later, the crash came, and I grabbed one of the life preservers.
She slung the preserver over one arm before jumping over the rail. She went underwater for a long time and then came back to the surface, only to sink again. Finally, she came to the top again, but this time she managed to hang on to some floating debris until sailors in a yawl boat from the SS James B. Wood pulled her out of the water.
It was awful. While I was probably in the water for a few minutes, it seemed like hours.
The SS Sir William Simmons was nearby the collision when it happened. Captain William McElroy had heard both vessels blowing danger signals, followed by the groan of tortured steel and the death rumble of the Frank H. Goodyear. Slowing his own vessel to a crawl, he eased through the fog in the collision. He heard the people in the water screaming for help. Finally, he came to the dark outline of the James B. Wood in the fog. Ordering his ship to a full stop, he ordered all hands on deck to throw out life preservers in the direction of the voices. But soon, the voices vanished. Grabbing the pilot house's megaphone, Captain McElroy asked if there was anything more he could do. Captain Gibson shouted back that all was done that could be done. After checking his vessel, Captain McElroy would ease the Sir William Simmons back on course for Detour, Michigan. The survivors were able to get away from the ship's suction, still held on to the hope that they would be rescued by the Wood. Captain Gibson of the James B. Wood ordered his men to lower the lifeboats and make every possible effort to save those in the water. The collision would claim 18 lives, 16 men, 1 woman, and 1 child. The crew of the James B. Wood were only able to pick up 5 survivors: Frank Bassett, his mother Emma Bassett, George Grant, the engineer, Frank Mollick, fireman, and Captain Russell Heminger. Captain Gibson and the James B. Wood's crew remained at anchor near the collision for 7 hours in hope of rescuing more. When the fog lifted, however, it was clear that the rest of the crew had perished. Gibson would sail his damaged vessel with a 6-foot hole in the port bow to the Grand Trunk Railway dock near Point Edward, Canada. Captain Heminger would notify the Frank H. Goodyear's owners, Buffalo and Susquehanna Steamship Company, of the loss of the ship and life. The vessel was fully insured. Upon investigation, it was found that Captain Gibson, like Captain Heminger, was going too fast for the prevailing conditions, and it failed to ensure the course of the SS James B. Wood was not a hazard to oncoming vessels. Additionally, his first mate, Don McClellan, who was on duty for the pilot house, had his certificate suspended for 60 days for the same violation. Captain Heminger would have his license suspended for 60 days. If you've liked what you've heard, please give us a like and subscribe. And as always, may the fair winds guide you through dangerous tides.